Florida Civic Literacy Exam Practice Test Answers 2024, Part 2. Question 1. What is the concept of social contract in political theory? An agreement among individuals to create and obey a government. A contract between two private parties. A legal agreement between businesses. A constitution written by the government. The social contract is an agreement among individuals to create and obey a government in exchange for protection and social order. Question 2. Which of the following principles is demonstrated by the division of government into distinct branches? Federalism, popular sovereignty, separation of powers, social contract theory. The separation of powers is the principle that divides government into distinct branches to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. Question 3. What is the main purpose of the system of checks and balances? To ensure economic stability, to control the power of government branches, to manage public education, to protect private property. The system of checks and balances is designed to control the power of each branch of government, preventing any one branch from becoming too powerful. Question 4. Which Enlightenment thinker is associated with the idea of natural rights? Thomas Hobbes, Voltaire, John Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. John Locke is associated with the idea of natural rights, which are life, liberty, and property. Question 5. What is the significance of the Magna Carta in the development of democracy? It established the first democratic government. It limited the power of the king and established legal rights. It created the United States Constitution. It was the first document to grant women the right to vote. The Magna Carta limited the power of the king and established certain legal rights, influencing the development of democracy. Question 6. Which principle states that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed? Rule of law, popular sovereignty, federalism, judicial review. Popular sovereignty is the principle that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed. Question 7. Which document first asserted that no one is above the law? The U.S. Constitution, the Magna Carta, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. The Magna Carta first asserted that no one, not even the king, is above the law. Question 8. What does the rule of law ensure in a democratic society? The government has absolute power. Laws are applied equally to all citizens. Only the wealthy have legal rights. Laws can be changed arbitrarily. The rule of law ensures that laws are applied equally to all citizens, protecting individual rights and liberties. Question 9. How does the U.S. Constitution address the principle of federalism? By dividing power between national and state governments. By centralizing all power in the federal government. By granting all power to the states. By establishing a monarchy. Federalism is addressed in the U.S. Constitution by dividing power between the national and state governments. Question 10. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides for the freedom of speech? First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides for the freedom of speech. Question 11. What is the primary role of the judicial branch of the U.S. government? To create laws, to enforce laws, to interpret laws, to amend laws. The primary role of the judicial branch is to interpret laws and ensure they are applied fairly. Question 12. Which document begins with the words "We the people"? The Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the U.S. Constitution, the Federalist Papers. The U.S. Constitution begins with the words "We the people," indicating that government power comes from the people. Question 13. What is the significance of the Declaration of Independence? It established the first American government. It declared the colonies' independence from Britain. It outlined the structure of the U.S. government. It guaranteed individual rights and liberties. The Declaration of Independence declared the American colonies' independence from Britain and outlined the principles of liberty and equality. Question 14. What is the primary purpose of the Bill of Rights? To outline the powers of the government, to protect individual liberties, to establish a federal banking system, to regulate interstate commerce. The primary purpose of the Bill of Rights is to protect individual liberties and limit the power of the government. Question 15. Which constitutional amendment abolished slavery in the United States? 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, 16th Amendment. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. Question 16. Which branch of the U.S. government is responsible for making laws? Executive, judicial, legislative, administrative. The legislative branch, consisting of Congress, is responsible for making laws. Question 17. What is the purpose of the preamble to the U.S. Constitution? To introduce the Constitution and state its purpose, to outline the structure of the government, to list the amendments to the Constitution, to provide the rules for ratifying the Constitution. The preamble to the U.S. Constitution introduces the document and states its purpose, such as forming a more perfect union and establishing justice. Question 18. Which document is considered the supreme law of the United States? The Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the U.S. Constitution, the Federalist Papers. The U.S. Constitution is considered the supreme law of the United States. Question 19. What is the significance of the Federalist Papers? They declared independence from Britain. They outlined the first American government. They supported the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. They listed grievances against King George III. The Federalist Papers were a series of essays written to support the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. Question 20. What does the principle of judicial review entail? The power of the President to veto laws, the ability of Congress to override a veto, the authority of courts to declare laws unconstitutional, the requirement that all laws be approved by the judiciary. Judicial review is the authority of courts to declare laws unconstitutional. Question 21. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides for the right to a fair trial? First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, Eighth Amendment. The Sixth Amendment provides for the right to a fair trial, including the right to an impartial jury and legal counsel. Question 22. What does the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution state? That no person shall be denied the right to vote. That powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states. That all persons born in the U.S. are citizens. That Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The 10th Amendment states that powers not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the states or to the people. Question 23. Which principle is reflected in the phrase "we the people"? Federalism, separation of powers, popular sovereignty, judicial review. The phrase "we the people" reflects the principle of popular sovereignty, indicating that government power comes from the people. Question 24. Which landmark case established the principle of judicial review? Brown v. the Board of Education, Marbury v. Madison, Plessy v. Ferguson, Roe v. Wade. Marbury v. Madison established the principle of judicial review, allowing the Supreme Court to declare laws unconstitutional. Question 25. Which constitutional amendment granted women the right to vote? 15th Amendment, 19th Amendment, 21st Amendment, 26th Amendment. The 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote. Question 26. What is the significance of the case Brown v. Board of Education? It established judicial review. It upheld segregation laws. It declared school segregation unconstitutional. It supported the internment of Japanese Americans. Brown v. Board of Education declared that school segregation was unconstitutional, overturning the separate but equal doctrine. Question 27. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution abolished poll taxes in federal elections? 15th Amendment, 19th Amendment, 24th Amendment, 26th Amendment. The 24th Amendment abolished poll taxes in federal elections. Question 28. What is the primary purpose of the Supremacy Clause in the U.S. Constitution? To establish the power of the executive branch. To outline the process of amending the Constitution. To ensure that federal laws take precedence over state laws. To provide for the election of senators. The Supremacy Clause ensures that federal laws take precedence over state laws in cases of conflict. Question 29. What principle allows each branch of government to limit the powers of the other branches? Federalism, popular sovereignty, checks and balances, social contract theory. Checks and balances allow each branch of government to limit the powers of the other branches to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. Question 30. Which document served as a model for the U.S. Bill of Rights? The Magna Carta, the Mayflower Compact, the Articles of Confederation, the Federalist Papers. The Magna Carta served as a model for the U.S. Bill of Rights, providing early examples of individual rights and liberties. Question 31. What is the main function of the legislative branch of the U.S. government? To interpret laws, to enforce laws, to make laws, to adjudicate disputes. The main function of the legislative branch is to make laws. Question 32. Which amendment to the U.S. Constitution lowered the voting age to 18? 15th Amendment, 19th Amendment, 24th Amendment, 26th Amendment. The 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18. Question 33. What does the principle of separation of powers entail? Dividing powers between federal and state governments. Dividing governmental powers among different branches. Ensuring individual rights and liberties, creating a federal system of government. The principle of separation of powers involves dividing governmental powers among different branches to prevent any one branch from becoming too powerful. Question 34. What was the primary goal of the Federalist Papers? To declare independence from Britain, to oppose the ratification of the Constitution. To support the ratification of the Constitution, to outline the Bill of Rights. The primary goal of the Federalist Papers was to support the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. Question 35. Which constitutional principle states that the government's authority comes from the people? Rule of law, federalism, popular sovereignty, separation of powers. Popular sovereignty is the principle that states the government's authority comes from the people. Question 36. What is the significance of the Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade? It established judicial review. It declared school segregation unconstitutional. It legalized abortion nationwide. It supported the internment of Japanese Americans. Roe v. Wade legalized abortion nationwide, making it a landmark case in reproductive rights. Question 37. Which amendment guarantees the right to bear arms? First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Sixth Amendment. The Second Amendment guarantees the right to bear arms. Question 38. What was the primary purpose of the Articles of Confederation? To serve as the first Constitution of the United States. To declare independence from Britain, to outline the structure of the federal government, to provide for the direct election of senators. The Articles of Confederation served as the first Constitution of the United States, outlining the initial structure and functions of the government. Question 39. What principle is demonstrated by the government being accountable to the law? Federalism, rule of law, popular sovereignty, checks and balances. The rule of law is the principle that the government is accountable to the law and must act within the framework of established legal rules. Question 40. What does the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment prohibit? Government interference with free speech, government establishment of an official religion, government restrictions on the press, government interference with the right to assemble. The Establishment Clause in the First Amendment prohibits the government from establishing an official religion.